Hello, this is Candace Waller, Christian fiction author. I've got two books out, What Goes Around Comes Around, and my new book, Good Things Come. And I want to welcome Ruby Shivers to this channel, this show. We're going to be talking about her new book, Why Shouldn't I Cry? Ode to the Black Man, and also her publishing background. And just she's going to introduce herself. So I'm going to let her take it. We actually met at a writing group. That's how I met her. And we actually were in a book together, right, Miss Ruby?
That's right.
Story. So we have a little history. So I thought, since this is, you want to talk about relationships, and one of my most popular articles on my blog is What Men Want. And she had a successful marriage of 55 years. I mean, that is like amazing. Okay. When 50% of marriages end in divorce, she was able to, through thick and thin. So she's going to tell us about that, give us some tips for the younger women about our relationship with our men. So I'm going to let Miss Ruby just handle it from here.
Okay, Candace, I don't know so much about how many tips, but I thank you so much, Candace, for inviting me to talk to you today, particularly since this is Black History Month.
Yes.
I understand the topic today is loving a Black man.
Yes.
You know, but I think I may be able to speak on that a little bit since I was married for over 55 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he made his transition about 5 years ago, but I still love him.
Mm-hmm.
Even so, I was not quite sure how to approach this subject. But you know me, Candace, I approach all things relating to Blackness from the position that 401 years of slavery has obviously shaped our lives in a serious way. So I always assume that any serious subject about the lives of Black people cannot be seen through the lens, except through the lens of 401 years of slavery. So, you know, people ask me often, say, well, why you talk about that and compare it to, because I've compared now to this virus that's upon us. They ask me, why do you compare it to the virus? And I said, well, you see how this virus, the coronavirus, has come upon us and upset everybody's life. I compare slavery as a virus that has impacted all areas of our lives. You know what? And including Black love. The love of a Black man or Black woman. As I said before, we've been slapped with what I coined the African slave virus 401 that has totally ransacked our way of interacting with each other.
Yes.
You know, sort of a natural outcome of interrupting the family as we knew it from our homeland of Africa.
What was that family like in Africa? Because I think a lot of people don't understand what that is.
Right. Africa was like any other society that has not been interrupted. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't perfect, but it had not been interrupted in ways that we found ourselves once we came over here. So as a result, Black love, it looked at, even from some of us, as something different from other loves. Well, no. We got to begin to understand not to accept other people's definition of our love. You know, it's as skewed at best, but you know, the assumption that I'm sure you hear this sometimes, Black men don't stick around. Well, when they were brought over here, they was taken from us. So we learned that then. You know, another one is Black men don't show love. We were pitted against each other when we first came to these shores. You know what I'm saying? So somehow we picked up on that. Say Black men don't take care of their children. Well, when we were brought over here, we were separated from our children, you know? So we learned absentee parenting there. I could go on and on and on, but I think you get the message on how our love relationship has been tampered with, you know, to say the least. Now, in spite of that, though, think about it, Candace. In spite of all that I just thrown at you, we are still the most loving, the most caring, the most giving love of all time. I don't know why. Could be because we are extremely faith-based people, and that our foundation has allowed us to produce the most love amongst us that only Black love can produce. Now, some of our Black love just sort of cement around our troubles, I guess, of the conflict amongst us. And I can't say we don't have them, because we do have tremendous conflict among us as women and men, and say our very nature, our very essence. That's what some of our philosophers say. We just connect anyway, even in spite of all that we've gone through. We're just connecting because it comes from us, through us. Sometimes we don't even understand. We think just because we have left our place of origin that everything else was severed from us. But no, that's not the case. It's sort of innate in us. So it comes out. And we are seriously some of the most loving people that you want to see. But you know, Candace, when I was writing my book, Why Shouldn't I Cry? Ode to the Black Man?
Yeah.
I ran across a piece from this sister that was so appropriate in explaining one's perception of Black love. I'm going to read it for you a bit, okay?
Yes, that'd be
I
wonderful.
thought it was so appropriate. It says, it's the apology on page 19 of my book.
Okay.
It said, they beat me. And I called you to save me, but you couldn't. So I secretly resented you. They took my babies and sold them. I begged you to save us, but you couldn't. So I secretly blame you. They raped me, and I cried out for you to protect me, but you couldn't. So I stopped trusting you. Then you were supposed to be my man, my provider, my protector. But when I needed you, you couldn't be there. So I hated you. How could I let you tell me what to do when Martha could protect me more than you? How could I submit to you when you are forced to submit to Martha? So to protect myself, I submitted to the one who could protect me and our children. I stopped trusting you. I stopped loving you. I stopped honoring you. I stopped valuing you, and in turn, I became valueless to you. I didn't see the frustration in your eyes when our children were sold. I didn't hear your silent cries when I was beaten. I didn't see your anger when I was being ravished. I didn't understand that you held your emotions to be strong for me. I thought you didn't care, but you wanted to be there. You wanted to protect me. But Martha made it so you couldn't. So I would trust them more than you. I didn't see the hidden hand shaping our destiny. All I saw was my pain and the feeling that you neglected me. For all the times I blamed you, I'm sorry. For the times I let you down. For all the times I've broken your spirit, my words and my actions. For the times I openly rejected you and you tried to control you because I thought less of you. I'm sorry. Martha had a plan that he said would work for 400 years. 400 years is over now. My eyes are wide open. I see the king in you. Please forgive my wrongs and see your queen in me.
Oh, this is
That's
beautiful.
my project. Beautiful, isn't it?
It is beautiful. And it's appropriate.
Yeah,
I think I see a shift going on, and I think that it's happened with us being home with COVID, and people saw with that George Floyd was just, it made my stomach sick, and we saw how we had to come together.
Yes.
There's been a lot of, if you see, there's a myth that Black people didn't want to get married, but they had jumping the broom. So they wanted to get married so much they jumped the broom. I mean, they tried to do it. They weren't. We were not allowed to be together. People don't realize that for centuries. This was like, you couldn't be. They would, they purposely, the way the system was, the systemic racism broke it up. They were purposely kept apart.
Oh, sure.
That over centuries. You know, it takes time to heal. I think that we expect Black people to heal like that. Okay, well, it's over now. We had the civil rights, which is only 50 years ago. But
I think what this virus has shown us more than anything else is it doesn't work that way. There's a thing where you have to be tended to. You have to be treated. You have to create a vaccine for some things. And we have never had anything created for the ills that we went through and going through still, because it's not over. See, when we came over here, there's been 401 years or more of the slavery, the racism, the Jim Crowism, and the ongoing racism. It's not stopped. So we got all that going against us, and we have never been treated in any serious way for it. So it's ongoing. And until we are treated as they are treating this virus, You see, when this virus came in, there were
Yeah.
different ones that wanted to talk about it. Even the president at the time, Trump, he wanted to get on TV. But what the scientists and other folks said, no, no, we want to hear from the authority. We want to hear from the scientists. We want to hear from the expert. We don't need to hear from people just because they're holding a position. But that's what has happened with us. We have gone through so much, and we allow anybody to tell our story. We won't say no, stop. I want the experts, because our condition is such that anybody can't talk about it. Just because you have a Harvard degree, or just because you have money, or just because you're a famous artist, don't mean that you're qualified to talk about the Black experience. And in my book, Candace, I talk about my being an unapologetic amateur.
Yes, I saw that. The three things you
Right?
talked about.
People say, well, why? Well, you know, you sound like you know. No, no, I know what I know. But I do know that there's a limit to what I know compared to what we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like the scientists with the coronavirus. There are people who could talk about this virus, because you and I talk about it. Everybody talk about what it's doing to us and what it's done. But when you want to get to the real nitty gritty of what this virus is doing and the vaccine we need, we grab the scientists, we grab the experts, we grab people who have studied this stuff, you know. And I tell everybody, I say I'm an expert in being Black, because I be Black every day, but I'm not an expert in Black living. I live Black every day, but I'm not an expert in Black living, because that's something you have to have studied in a lot of different ways. You can't just study it on the surface. You have to study what this 400 years have done to people who were brought out of their homeland over, you know, the Middle Passage, interchanged. And once they were brought here, put on slave block. Once they were put on slave block, abused, their children taken away, their husbands taken away from them, their wives taken away. There's so much that we have got in us that got to be, you know, really seen through the eyes of someone who can detect what this has done to us and is still doing to us. But I was reading your book too, young lady, and I tell you, you talk about love in such a sweet, innocent way. I read somewhere where you say, good things come. Love can be a roller coaster, but often makes us feel alive. And that's from your book, Good Things Come. So I've been reading upon you too. And then another quote I love from you, it says, never give up on love, even in times of adversity.
Yeah, I think that we have to realize as a people that we have a unique position, that we've gone through things that other people haven't gone through, and we have to be kinder to each other and more respectful to each other. And I was an incident that happened. I was at my church group, right? And this Black man and I, we always just talk and stuff. And anyway, this woman was like yelling, and I was like, first of all, don't yell at him like that. Please don't do that. And she was like, I'm like, well, why should I not defend him? If I'm not going to do it, he's not going to defend himself, because he was a big guy. So he was not going to say to this little lady, like, back off. But I told her to back off, because he wasn't doing anything. And, you can't just talk about him like that. He didn't mean anything. So we're not going to do that. And, sometimes we have to kind of step in for each other. And that's a way of showing love. Like, maybe because he said, oh, my goodness, nobody, she ain't going to say nothing to me again, because you told her. I told her in a nice way. Yes. Don't talk to him like that. Because we have to protect each other, and we have to kind of be there for each other. And sometimes, because we haven't, based on what Miss Ruby said, that we don't always do it.
Yeah.
Like, we have to do it when we can.
Because we're afraid, and in many cases, we don't really know the circumstances from what we come from. I do that with children too. I know sometimes it may be a little, you're taking a chance and may get a little cursed out or whatever. But if I see someone abusing children and calling them all kind of name, I'll find a way to intercept. There was a lady once, she had about 4 or 5 kids and quite young. And I knew she was outdone, and I knew that they were just getting on her last nerve. But she was calling them everything that I've never heard.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my, talking about, So I know how that affects children, and I know how we can get really low down and dirty sometimes with ours, about the hair and about this. And I just went to her and I said, I know you're really going through something. It looks like you have a load. I said, but I know you wouldn't offend an old lady if I was giving you an advice. I had to go that way. And she said, no. I said, because I probably shouldn't talk to them like that. I said, because when they grow up, they're going to always remember. And she agreed. She said, I'm sorry. Then she started telling me what she had gone through. She had to go through. That was the 4th place that she had come that day from where she lived. to get assistance for her children or something. But we're going through so much personal thing, and we don't understand sometimes how we treat our man or a woman or the children, and it all come from this aggravation, I call it, from those 401 years of just being treated like nothing.
And
So,
also the media too, like we're depicted as not
oh yeah,
having relationships. If you look at TV
sure.
and, you know, they're not being loving, Black men aren't loving, which I've not found that to be true, or they
Right.
don't want to support you. And I have not found that to be true. And some of the people that supported me, when I started, I told Miss Ruby, when I was in college, I was the crazy journalist. I wanted to be the writer so much. And there were Black men that stepped in, that supported me, helped me. I mean, there's a Black man, he worked at he worked at Black Enterprise, and he came back to the school. He said, look, if anybody works for this publication, I will help you get in publishing. Publishing in New York's a top market. It's very hard to get in. And
Yes.
he helped me. And because of him, I was able to get a lot of different things. So this myth that they don't help, he came back and helped. That's a myth. He did. And there were Black men that I introduced college. They helped me.
Right. And those myths and those misconceptions are purposely promoted so that we can hate each other. All this is about us not liking ourselves and liking each other. And plus, when they put, you know, whoever control the situation write the narrative, and they write the narrative about us, and we begin to believe the narratives ourselves. My first book that I wrote was called Verbal Healing. We must reject tired, trite, tasteless, and other nonsensical expressions that keep us damaged. Well, the idea behind that, it's about 73 compilation of expressions that we use against ourselves. We think we created it. We didn't create it. Other folks created it for us so we can repeat them and you know, believe what the expressions say about us. So what I did was try to show people all of those are expressions that we just kind of throw off the top of our lips every day, to know that, you know, realize where you're coming from when you're making statements about yourself, or you're making statements for one, just one for example. I know one I had in there says, we are our worst enemy. We used to love to say that. Well, we're not our worst enemy. First, you better believe, in order to become half of a bad enemy as your worst enemy, you would have had to enslave yourself, you would have had to rape, you would have had to kill, you would have had to hung people up by the neck, you would have had to do a whole lot of things to reach that, you know, equation. We are our worst enemy. And that's just one, but there's other expressions and phrases in the book that I say we need to reconsider when we're talking to each other and about each other. One of the things I saw on Facebook recently were about this lady, it went viral, this glue, this lady
The
who
Gorilla Glue girl,
yeah, and some of the folks on Facebook wrote that, well, that was ignorant, and that's why they think we are ignorant. I wonder who are they? They don't. First of all, they don't think we're ignorant. They think we are some of the smartest people in the world. They think we are intelligent. That's why they keep their feet on our necks. If they didn't think we were great or the best or whatever, they wouldn't be so diligent in trying to keep us down. So we have to stop thinking people think what they don't think about us. You know, we have to hold our heads up, hold our chest out and say, I know, you know who I am, but structurally you're trying to dehumanize me, you know, but it's not because you think that. Otherwise, you're going to begin to think that if you think they think that. So there's a lot of things we got to take notice of ourselves and try to dismiss some of those old myths and misconceptions, particularly about our love. We love each other. Our men love us. We love our men.
So why did you write this book, really? Because it seems like when you go into her book, you'll see talks about history, and then there's a lot about her family and about her husband. She mentioned she was married for 55 years before he passed away 5 years ago. She talks about the love of the family when he was sick and declining and how they were there for him. So why did you write this book?
Well, I tell you, there's been so, particularly lately, it's always been, but I mean, it seems like over this century, just been so much negativism about our Black men. And since I know some of the areas and places and times that it came about, I decided to say, well, it's time for someone to write some positive things about our Black men, but not just write about them, try to give them a history of how this stuff came about, the essence. of their greatness. And I say that because if you read up on our history, you'll see that not that we're perfect people, no one is, but we have been really examples for the world to see. And one of the things I want our people to know, that when we were brought over here from Africa, there were folks who had come. This didn't just happen after we came over here as slaves now. When people saw us from out of a homeland of Africa, they saw the greatness in us. So having seen the greatness, think about it. Someone coming into Africa, the continent, not just the country, but the continent of Africa. And so all those magnificent things, you know, the pyramids, the great societies, everything great over there in Africa. Mm-hmm. Well, naturally, when they decided that they were going to take us from our homeland as slaves, they got to dehumanize. They got to paint a different picture.
Or give us a mental, erase our memory of it.
People. So that was first done.
Right.
It wasn't done by just these little nobodies, the little Ku Klux Klans, or just evil poor white folk. This was done by academicians. This was done by scientists. This was done by people who knew better. But in order for them to enact that image of us and make it stick, it had to be done from people who was respected. So a lot of their scientists in the 18th century began to say that we were not human. We were this or that. So when they brought us over here on those slave ships and treated us inhuman, they continued that, you know, definition of us. Mm-hmm. We're not human. So after having brought us over here, they continued, they perpetuated that image, and they treated us such that I tell everybody, because someone was say to me sometime, well, there's always been slavery. No. This is the first time in the annals of history that I've ever read about, that anyone has ever told me, that I can ever discern, that this is the first time that this kind of slavery has existed.
Chattel slavery, really, and for generations.
And it's a different kind of slavery, the way they treated us, mm-hmm. the way they dehumanized us, or tried anyway, the way they brutalized us. Mm-hmm. There were so many things with this particular slavery that had nothing to do with the quote slavery you read about, you know, in the book sometime. So that's the first thing I want them to know. This is a different type of slavery. Mm-hmm. Don't ever compare it with it. Don't ever let anybody compare this slavery with anyone else. And then, you know, I reveal, as I said before, the source from where this came. I want them to know there was those people out there who was deliberate in creating this image of us. And then I explain the explanation around why this was done. As I said to you before, in order for them to subjugate us to the inhumanity that they started out with, they had to go through all these things, and they continue to do it even today. And so then, after having set that stage to let them know, then I use my own experience with the men, particularly, because that's what I'm dedicating the book to, yes. Men. Black men. I use my own experience with my coming up in this little southern town of Lake Butler, Florida, and the men I knew who proved to be those heroes and things I talk about in the book.
Yeah, you give examples of how Black men have really shown up and shown out for you. And you know what? They did it back then too. I mean, we didn't hear about it in many in different ways, but they were leadership, and it's how we perceive each other. You know, they were always talking about there's always Black on Black crime, but most crime is committed. People of the same race tend to commit crime against each other. It's not just a Black on Black thing. That's almost like a myth, but it's something that it's a catchphrase that makes Black people seem more violent.
Exactly.
And that's not, you know, that's not.
And they know that's not true, because first of all, just on the surface, if you look at that, they're the one that brought us over here slaves. So they're the most violent people. So that alone would kind of make you, if you're a thinking person, you say, but if you're not, they can catch you because you'll say, oh, I'm in my neighborhood and I do see violence. But you go beyond that. The violence here don't compare with the violence that came over on those ships across the Middle Passage. There's no comparison. There's no comparison to the violence they put when they put a rope around your neck. There's no comparison to the violence when they cut the belly out of the woman and killed the baby. So don't even compare. But as you said, even so, if the violence that they're talking about now, that is violence is pretty much assigned to the race of people that you're around. You know, it's in every community.
Yeah, it's everywhere. The violence is everywhere. The stuff we do across the
Exactly.
board is everywhere. We're very, I don't know. I don't know what's happened. It's just that people tend to be that way. But I want you to talk about the images of Black love, because that's one of the things I have. People say, oh, I'll never find a love because, Black men don't get married and no one wants to marry us. And, I think a lot of Black women feel that way. And, it's just, it's hard for everybody to find relationships, not just Black women.
Yes, exactly. It's very difficult. And as I said before in my introduction, I was saying there's a reason, first of all, behind some of the habits that we've fallen into. And it all came out of our experience. So if we fail to realize that, we will begin to see the very negative and can't figure out where did it come from or why. But if we knew from whence we came, and we knew our history, and we knew how those conditions shaped us. And that's why I make the comparison of this virus now. This virus is a great thing in that it was a bad thing. It killed us, it has maimed us, and now it's doing that, but it's something that have brought forth a revelation almost to compare what I call African slave virus with this virus. So when we're wondering why are we in certain ways that seem negative to us, it come from having to have gone through and still going through 401 years of treatment that would change any human being. My fourth book was scheduled to be Damaged Goods Made in America, but I didn't. I changed it and wrote Emotions to Live With. But we are really damaged goods. We have survived. Many of us are sort of unscathed, but have gone through this. You would expect a lot of people are still, having problem with having gone through 400 years. No one has thought to tend to us in any way. No one have thought to say, well, you know what? Anyone who's gone through 401 years of that kind of brutality, slavery, Jim Crow, the racism, ongoing racism, needs some attention. We just throw us out there and say, well, I wonder what's wrong with them. They don't like this, and they don't do this, and they don't do that.
Well, getting on that point, how do you think people can heal? I mean, we have these relationships, and I do see examples in my own life of successful, Black relationships, but there's still like healing needs to be done. How can we?
Oh, sure. And you know what? One of the reasons I fall back on I'm an unapologetic amateur, I wouldn't know. But you know what I do in my book? I'm begging our experts. This is what, can't find the page now. But what I do is beg our experts to come out of the closet. And for the ones who've already, I shouldn't say that because there's many who have always been out here. Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Akbar, I could name them all. Francis Quest Wilson. They're experts who have been out, but they silence those folks who they know can help us. But the same as with this virus, Candace, I'll say again, you don't need me because I don't know the answer. I can't give you the answer. But there are experts amongst our people that need to come forth again, demand that they be heard. So tell us, the ones who've asking the question, we know you don't know, because it takes more than just you learning your Black history. It takes more than you just living Black. It takes you knowing about what happened and how it affects you as a human being to have gone through all this stuff and to been under. This is a structural thing. I mean, it's not just a surface. We have this structural racism that have developed people into something other than what they were coming out of Africa. So that's my answer. I'll tell anyone straight up, I'm an unapologetic amateur, and not just me, but I don't think that anyone who has not studied the what 401 years of slavery, Jim Crowism and racism have done to us can give you a true answer as to what really we can do to get us beyond, above and beyond our situation. I really don't.
Because in your book, you mentioned the expert, the unapologetic amateur, and the antagonist.
Right. Yeah. I said there are three of us that we listed. There are three voices in our midst today: the amateur, the antagonist, and the expert. Well, as I said before, the amateur I consider myself an amateur. I know a lot. I read a lot. I read history, but that's as far as it goes, because in what we need something more than surface. We need something so go deep into why we are affected in ways that we're affected. The expert, that's where the expert comes in there. The expert, that's the person who know what they know. You know, that's the expert who has studied in all kinds of ways, you know. And then there's the antagonist. The antagonists are those who we grab off the street, or we grab out of sports arena, or we grab just because they got money. The Kanye Wests of the world, the Clarence Thomases of the world, people who may have a degree here, a degree there, money here, no, the greatest sports figure here, but they are not experts in the area that can, you know, to tell us who we are. So those are the three voices that I talk about in my book.
So you tell us a little bit about your history. I know you said the book says you went to Seton Hall.
Well, I'm a country girl. Came from a little town called Lake Butler, Florida. After graduation, I came up here with my family. That was already, some part of my family was already here. And I got married. And after, I think I was married about a year, I decided I was not made for the factory. I started out as a factory worker. There's nothing wrong with that. I just wasn't made for it. So I decided one day I better get to school. And I went to a Drake Business School, became a secretary. I did that for about a year and then decided, well, maybe I better go further. And I did. I went to Seton Hall University. Graduated from Seton Hall University, degree in communications. And at the same time, I started out corporate America. But I wasn't totally satisfied with that.
You got 3 sons, right? You have 3 sons, right?
Yeah, I got married, 3 sons, you know, and then I decided to go for a teaching certificate because I knew I needed to, or I thought I needed to teach. Once I got my certificate and came to Plainfield here, and I wanted to try to change the curriculum to sort of match what I thought our children needed, because the curriculum here certainly wasn't doing that. We have a different way of learning. But anyway, that was not allowed.
Talk about that, because I think that's the important point you hit upon. It's like teaching our children. I feel, because I have a dance group, and so every year I have a dance program, but I always try to bring someone to like educate them on different things, because they need education that they're not going to get in school, because a lot of our history is not in the school system. So it's up to us as their parents, their aunties, you know.
Right. It's up to us, but we gotta watch that too, because we can't be blamed for something we don't know. Even now, some of our teachers, they may be good teachers, but we all have been studied under a system that's set up not necessary for us. So we carry on the system that's set up for them. You know who them is, the dominant society. So in doing that, then that leaves our kids out. Our kids begin to be stigmatized and begin to look at differently because they maybe not following the same, you know, as the other person. So I sort of always understood that there must be some other curriculum that they would, you know, thrive under. And so I got with a group of teachers that was here at the time feeling the same way I did, but we couldn't get anywhere. The school was controlled by someone else. So then I decided to go back into corporate America, and that's where I was. And then later on, I decided to start writing my book.
You've written, how many books have you written? 4 or 5 books, right?
This is my 5th one. My first book, as I said before, was We must reject tired tractations and other nonsensical expressions that keep us damaged. And I changed it to verbal healing. After going on the road for a couple of times and maybe on a show or two, TV show, and then when I finished telling them what my title was, it was a long title, my time was up. So I changed it to verbal healing. And then after that, I wrote Victims of Confusion. My books are social commentary books. I wrote one fiction book. I don't generally write fiction. I wrote one fiction. So the second book was Victims of Confusion, because as I said before, that's self-explanatory. We're very confused. The third book was The Quarters. And it's not autobiographical, but it reflect my life pretty much coming up in a southern town. That was third, right? Then my fourth book was The Emotions to Live With. I decided to write something that sort of expose, I guess, some of the things that we feel that we have to kind of hide, the emotions anyway, that we kind of have to hide sometimes, not understanding that these emotions are legitimate. We're made with them. We're in the image of our God. I know when I was a child coming up in my little church, that's all I heard was the God hates sin, and my God is a jealous God. All these emotions, and I'm saying as a kid, well, if he hates sin, if he's a jealous God, and blah blah splee, then he must have the emotions that I'm trying to hide. So that's why I wrote the book Emotions to Live With, and my subtitle will Let Go, Let God, meaning that the emotions you can't, you're going to hate. That's just part of who you are, the human being. You may try as hard as you can. I do try very hard not to hate beyond what I need to. And if I find myself hating more than I think I should, then I say, I'll go to God in prayer. Give it to him. You take care of it, because you can handle it and I can't. That's where the let go, let God comes from. So the same is with you envy. You don't have to be envious in a way that would be destructive. You may be envious of somebody, boy, I like that. And if that's what they call envy. Some of these definitions are not really, really what they are. But if you saw a car, you say, I wish I had that car. You may not envy it in terms of wanting to take it from the person, but it may be something that you wish you had and wonder why that person has and I don't, that kind of stuff. So there are emotions that you have, and if we just sort of admit that there are those emotions that we don't want to get, we don't want to get carried away on. And if we do, we know we do have, for those of us who faith-based, we can let them go. God takes care of them. And for those who are not, well,
So I wanted to ask you before we go, I wanted to see if you can give us some tips or advice, because, you had a successful marriage. I mean, everything you said is not perfect, but you had a successful, loving marriage. And, sometimes it's hard, like for young women, to know what to look for. And, what did you tell your sons or your granddaughters when they come to you with different things?
I tell anyone, be prepared to compromise, be prepared to, and understand, be prepared to compromise and understand that life is not, my mom used to say a bed of roses. And there are going to be difficulties at times, mentally, physically, and otherwise. But if you always know that the relationship you're in got to be worked on, you will go into it realizing that, well, I can't blame that person for everything. That person shouldn't blame me for everything. We should understand that we each are individual with our own set of beliefs and what we want to accept and what we're not going to accept. In other words, be prepared to meet each other, where you can. And I don't know, sometimes you have to, that depends on who's.
But you said that you want to be with someone that's willing to compromise.
Compromise is the big word.
And not both of you have to compromise. What else?
That's what I'm saying. You both have to compromise. You have to go in it with the understanding that neither one is perfect. That's how I say it. You have to come in with the understanding that neither is perfect. And sometimes, and I'm just speaking for myself, and I don't want to categorize all women, but sometimes we assume that as a woman, so I have to speak from that perspective. I don't know about a man. I know sometimes, I know with my husband of 55 years, sometimes I would get so angry. But I always had sense to know that if I got angry with him, he must get angry. My husband was just he was just a sweetheart. So while I was just go off sometimes get angry, he never seemed to get as angry with me.
He was patient. He was patient.
Very patient, but I always even with that, I always understand. I think maybe that's why mine lasted so long, because we were still loving each other even after 55 years. Even as angry as I was, and I realized that although he may not have expressed it the same way, but there must be something I did that made him angry too. You always know that you got your faults and he got his. You can kind of get along to a point.
Well, you know what? I had a friend, and he was his name was Mr. Hackett, and Mr. Hackett used to say all the time, "You have to disagree without being disagreeable. You're all gonna disagree. You are two people coming together. You're not gonna agree on everything. You have to have good communication." He was a big one. He said, "You have to talk. You cannot shut down. If you're upset, you have to be willing to talk about it. Exactly. And even if you disagree, you have to, in a way that's not." You're not trying to ruin your marriage. You kind of express your opinion without, saying, "Oh, I mean, that was so funny." Like before the election, I was talking to this guy and I liked him, and he was getting on me because who I was voting for, who he felt I should vote for, who I should support. And I said, the way he said it was not in a nice way, and he kind of made me feel like I wasn't smart. And I said to myself, do I want to be with somebody that if I disagree, and I wasn't disagreeing in a way that was like, "Oh, you're an idiot." I was like, "Oh, this is my opinion, blah, blah, blah." He was so, like, "You need to read a book." I mean, it was like that. And I'm like, that's unkind. I'm thinking if we
that's
have
a turn off right there,
right there, that's automatic. You need to watch for warning signs like that. Like people, my favorite quote is from Maya Angelou, and she says, "When people show you who they are the first time,
believe them.
Exactly. You oftentimes, and in my past relationships, like there were warning signs with those guys that I never should have let it go that far. But of course, you said, "Oh, he's cute. Oh, he comes from this." Your heart tells you. If you know yourself really, really well, you can pick out quickly who's going to be a match and who's not going to be a match.
Right.
And
you love yourself first.
And 30 minutes, you can tell.
Right. Love yourself first to the extent that you won't accept certain treatments. Once you establish that with yourself, then and that you won't do unto others as you have them do unto you. So if you're going to establish that with yourself, obviously you should try establish that same attitude with the person. Just, I'm not going to treat them bad. They don't treat me bad. But this abusive thing, I tell every young person right away, that is a no-no. Don't even accept that.
And it's not just hitting. It also can be emotional. It could be verbal. I mean, we have to look for warning signs. People think, "Oh, I don't have a bruise on my body."
Yeah.
That don't mean you're not being abused. You don't have a bruise.
That's true. That's some of the worst abuse, that verbal abuse.
Yeah, and they're belittling, and it was like belittling, and I'm like, why is he saying that? And I'm like, I have to really think about that, because like you said, Ms. Ruby said, you got to love yourself first, because you can't love anybody fully until you really love yourself and know yourself. What do you want? Like if you, and it's not my friend Mary said before she passed away, she said, "You know what, Candace?" She said, "You're a good person, and you have to believe that. And you have to believe that you're worthy of the best. And if that person is not for you, you don't have to argue and convince anybody. Just leave it alone. Because the more energy you put into that person, the person that you're supposed to be with, it can't come into your life if you have a lot of negativity."
Exactly.
She told me that. She was like, and she said, "You're going to remember me." And she's been gone many years. She said, "You're going to remember that." She said, "Because this man, you knew that man was wrong. I don't know what you was thinking about. And you left him alone, girl. What you doing over there?"
Good advice.
She was like, "Don't do it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" Her name was Mary. And I used to call her Mary. And she was old enough to be my grandmother, but she said, "Call me Mary." And I used to go over her house and I would do her nails, and she'd make the best spaghetti, and we'd be sitting there eating, and she would be, "Girl, let's do this." And you would think she was my age.
Right, where you can get wisdom from.
Yes, and wisdom, and having older women, like people don't really, I think that's another thing that you were hitting on, that in our culture, like the elderly was revered. Like when Cicely Tyson passed away, people were just like, oh my gosh, it was such a loss. She was an older Black woman and she had so much wisdom and she mentored so many younger actors. I think that with our relationships, that we should surround ourselves with older women who've already gone through it. They've had successful marriages. They kind of
well, Candace, you'll be very kind, because that is what it should be. And probably from your, and hopefully from your experience, that has been the case. But I find in this society, the elders are someone said, they ask you your age, and if you don't tell them your age, they think you are ashamed of your age. I say, no, that is not it. In this society, age is not revered like in African society.
It's not.
When I was in Africa, a couple of 2 or 3 times, I've been to four corners of Africa. And everywhere you go in Africa that I've been, they revere you. You get up the plane and you got your mats waiting for you. You got things. They just revere older people. But here, the age can be a disadvantage.
They kind of look at it as a bad thing.
So that's why some people don't tell their age. It's not because they're ashamed of the age, just don't tell. But I saw a nice commercial on TV not too long ago. This lady says, age is a number and mine is unlisted. I thought that was kind of cute.
Yeah,
but you're right there. I know when I was coming up, we did, though. We had not got that far out of, I guess, our culture that we were still revering elders.
I think it's so important because they have so many lessons.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother used to say, you can't make a man love you. And I never understood that. But when I got older, I understood what she meant. She was like, you know what? People know who you are. And they either are going to want to support you and bring you forward, or they're going to put you back. And you need to know, if he doesn't have the things that recognize you, the qualities you have, he's never gonna. Like, you don't convince me. I have friends that make people over. You're right. Years. That man ain't never gonna marry you. He ain't gonna marry you. 12 years, you gonna give him a baby already too? Forget it.
Yeah, you can't make people. They have to come, you know, in a relationship. They
have to love you, and it happens faster. I mean, people think that love is this long thing, and I've done a lot of research just talking to people who have successful relationships, and most of them, I'm not talking to ones that met like when they were in elementary school, but when they met high school and beyond, it was not like this, 10 years. No. You know, if you know yourself, you know a good person in your life. You know, it's not like, I'm gonna give him a chance. I had a guy, Miss Ruby, tell me some crazy mess. I was like, nope. 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 Thank you, but no thank you. Nope. Because everything came out of his mouth was something crazy. And I was like, I know, I respect myself enough to know that this is not what I want in my life. And I left him alone. And it was not a thing where I was mean to him. I was like, we have to be going the same way. Relationships are like this, like a car. You can't have one going, it has to go, the two wheels have to go forward, or you're not going anywhere. So why even bother with the man that is not what you want? Right?
Yeah, that is so true.
And our young people, we go on the TV and we see, he cute, or some other dumb reason for liking him. And those people don't last long term. We put too much emphasis on the physical.
That's just surface love. My mom used to say that's just surface love. You got to get it deeper than that.
Yes. And physical, when you're physical quickly, it's surface. Like, that's not. And I think in your generation, I don't think people did that fast. I don't think people are like, hey, we're going to bed the first day.
No, I tell you straight up, this is a whole new thing. I thank God every day that I didn't have to come through this time looking for anyone. Oh no, it's a whole different scene here. I tell you. It's from what I see with the young people.
It's hard. Like, it's really hard to sift through. You have to sift.
Something that they accept, I would never dream to accept.
No.
Just to get to have a partner, that is not what I think love is about.
But we don't have love like I write romances because in my life, the best men in my life have cherished me. And it wasn't this, let's go to bed the first. I was talking to a friend and she said she went online and the man was he was so nasty. She was like, you haven't even taken me for a cup of coffee and you want to spend the weekend at my house. What happened? I meet you one day and then you're going to spend the night the next. He said, this is not a relationship. This is something you trying to pick up. And she like left it alone. And if you don't stop that and you fall into that trap, it's like, it never ends. You can't, that's not value. You have to, women don't understand. And what I liked about this book was that you saw how she was valued as a woman, what her husband did for her, how they showed love. And it wasn't a physical thing. There's no physical description in this book. This is not that type of book. But you know that they love each other because they talk to each other. How she supported him. That's what this book has. It has like a love story undercurrent in it. That's why I liked it so much. And she talks about history, but she talks about the love of her husband and how that manifests. And even when he was sick, he got sick. And he had a stroke, as she says in her book, how she took care of him. And that was how she showed love. She stood by her man to the very, very end. And that's the kind of love and respect that we all want to hope for. But she didn't go about it, like she said, surface. They had a deeper connection. And that's why I wanted her to talk about, this, what we should be aspiring to. Not like, oh, we meet on one day and the next day you're in a hotel. Like that's not how this works.
That way. No, that's so true. I think about him now in terms of the kind of, I know my my niece, that was years ago. We had been married. I met my husband up here, and then I would go home. I had a group that we went home yearly because I established a scholarship fund in honor of my dad, whom I loved dearly. He was one of those kind of men too. And so I established a scholarship fund so we would go home. And one day my little niece came to me after I had been going for about 5 years had brought Pete back, my husband back with. She said, and then she finally got married at 5th year. I think she told me, she said, I got married. And she said, my husband remind me of, she called him Uncle Pete. Remind me of Uncle Pete. She said, because I was always so impressed with you all. That's what you have to hope that you would exude if you want to, leave a legacy for your younger people. You got to show how to love. You got to love, and then you got to show the younger people how to love. You got to show them that it don't just accept anything just for the sake of having a partner. You got to have someone who can love you, who can express it, who can show it, who other folks will see it in your action.
But I think that's so beautiful what you said, that people can see it, because Bishop Jakes, I used to work at a publishing house. I have a publishing background. I was a publicist. I was an online publicist. And he had said, he said, you want to marry someone that when you're at your lowest moment, like you're at the funeral of your parent, the lowest moment, that person is holding your hand, that you know they have your back. And a lot of times people have what Miss Ruby said is, Ruby's mother said, is surface love. When it gets a little rough, all right, I got to go. Out of here. When you get sick, because sickness and disappointment come to us all, it is not going to be all a bed of roses. And when you are down, that person's got your back. That when you go home, that person, male or female, that man got your back. And that's what the love we're talking about. It's not something that's physical, like, oh, he got to be 6'4", or he got to be light skin, whatever that is. He has your back. And if you read this book, you will understand what that love is. It's not even a long book. It's short. It's got pictures in it. She talks about different people in her family, different men in her family, her grandkids. And so when you read this book, you will understand, get an insight into a love story, a real love story that, that you can aspire to, not like these romance novels you read. They meet on Tuesday and by Friday they're in bed with each other. That's not what we're talking about. This is like a romance for real. And it's like from the end, like she honored her vows that she said through sickness and in health, and she stood by her man and he stood by her and he appreciated her. And like she said, they may have had little, people get on your nerves, ain't gonna be all rosy, but to the end. And that's what, I wanted her to come on and we wanted to talk about loving a Black man and just Black love in general. So if you really want to get some insight into that and a good story, I would check this book out. It's a fast read.
Thank you, Candace. I just enjoyed myself all with you. I really, and I
it's available on Amazon, right?
Yes, on Amazon or my website.
On her website. I'm going to put the links to the video so you can find her. Do you have any parting thoughts, Miss Ruby?
No, except that love is love, and I'm so glad that you have had me on talking about it, and thought that I would be able to share some positive feedback with you. And of course, I told you I read your book because you had, well, we've been together.
Yeah, we met in a writing group. We've known each other.
Yeah, writing group. So you talked about your book, and I did get the chance to good things come. And when I read that part, it said love can be a roller coaster. Yes, it can.
Yes, it can.
Can be a little, but after what it said, but often it makes us feel alive, and that's a good thing. That's what love's supposed to do. And if it's not making you feel alive, then why are you wanting to feel dead? You know, leave that partner alone and do something else, or do where you go where you need to be, and that where you can be feeling alive. You know, because that's what life is all about. Too short to fool around with anything else.
It is. If it don't work, if that man's not good for you, leave him alone.
Yeah.
You got 2 feet. You could just walk away. You don't have to. You don't try. It's not your job. In this book, Miss Ruby did not try to change this man. He came the way he was, and they worked together. You ain't got to. He's not a potential. He had the ingredients to be a good person, and she went from there. Too many people try. Oh, he got potential. You know, no. No. You know what is good for you, and you know your heart. You have to know yourself and live your truth. Now, Miss Ruby is going to tell us her website and how we can get in contact with her. What's your website?
That's a good thing, Candace, and I usually have this right here. I should have.
It doesn't matter if she has
derelict in everything I do around my book. But Ruby,
below her website,
RubyWilliamsShivers.com.
Okay.
My website. And of course, you can always contact Ruby on Facebook. And also, I'm on Amazon. You can get me through Amazon.
And she has an author page. I know because I did it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I want to tell you that I write Christian romances. So I kind of put this together because I wanted to talk about love and a true love story. My new book is called Good Things Come. I'm doing promos about that. The paperback edition will be released soon. I'm also working on a nonfiction book called Beautiful Heart, and it's my love story. Like, you know, what I learned about love in my life. I had a love that, you know, my boyfriend, he passed away, he had cancer. So I talk about the love he gave me and what our relationship helped me propel forward. Like, he pushed me forward. Now he showed me how to be treated, and he really gave me a good example. You can reach me. I'm on my website, CandaceWaller.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Candace Waller Author. You can also email me at firstladypublishingpr@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Miss Ruby. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Candace.
Why Shouldn't I Cry? Ode to the Black Man. Check it out. It's on Amazon. I got my autographed copy. Check it out. And you know, she got some other books. So we're going to be doing some other things together. And I thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I've had a ball.
Bye.
Bye-bye.